Hey there, this is Dan. You're watching the Salty Sea, and today I'm doing something a little sillier, having some fun here. Going to do the Warcry Salt-score tier list. So, which warbands are the least enjoyable to play against? Which warbands will make your opponent tear all of their hair out? And which warbands are awesome for everyone, and even when you lose to them, you still can't help but tip your hat? We're going to start with Beasts of Chaos. Beasts of Chaos is pretty non-objectionable. They're good. They're one of the better war bands that isn't horrible to play against. I think the only thing that Beasts of Chaos do that is really objectionable is they have that reaction that reduces incoming damage. And anytime you think you've got a nice one-shot kill and you uh, don't get it because of an annoying reaction, I can't remember what it's called for Beasts of Chaos. It's I think Brute Resilience. There we go. Um, that can be a little annoying, but that's like the closest it gets to frustrating with them. So they're nearly in the perfect, deliciously filtered water of tier list here. They are, a clear lake of water. You are absolutely happy playing against them. Um, Bone splitters are pretty similar. I have aesthetic, like salt reactions to bone splitters. I hate them so much. I hate their visuals so much. But I don't think that counts here. I think the only thing they really do um, is that charge double. I think the charge double is pretty much always kind of just a little annoying because it's just too cheap for what it does on any kind of big hero, anything like that. So that I think puts them in Clear Lake, but otherwise, Bone Splitters are sweet. There's nothing really to complain about there. None of their guys are too cheap. None of their guys are too huge. None of their abilities are really horrible. I think they've got a couple aura abilities that maybe you could get on the wrong side of, but for the most part it's gonna be fine. What is it? Yeah, they have a -1 attack triple. uh if it's just on a triple, I don't think you're ever going to get frustrated by that. So I think I'm happy to put them in Clear Lake. Maybe we'll get them into Deliciously Filtered. And no, I hate the aesthetic so much I can't put them there. Corvus Cabal does get into Deliciously Filtered, though. Corvus Cabal is lovely to play against. They have like a clear gimmick that is fun for everyone. You have to set it up so your opponent can see when it's happening. Um, they're pretty good, but then again, like their cheap guys die so quick. I don't think they're good enough to drop them a tier at all. I think Corvus Cabal are sweet. Cypher Lords, if they were good, they'd be in Dead Sea. Instead, they're in Atlantic Ocean. Cypher Lords are awful to play against. And the reason why is like, so everything is super skewed, right, with Cypher Lords. So their profiles are super skewed in terms of being so glass cannony, not having nearly enough wounds, having, like the mirror blades will do a ton of damage, but they'll just fall off right away. And everything is kind of pointed to take into account the fact that they can teleport into combat. Well, getting someone teleported into combat against you is not very fun. And having to play against fighters who either you completely table them by midway through round 3 and your opponent is completely devastated, or you just like you can't get to them and then they teleport right onto you and do a ton of damage to where your stupid little ability to touch them is kind of rendered moot. That's just not a fun playstyle. I just think Cypher Lords are just too skewed to have people enjoy them, which puts them in a very specific place. If they were like good, even just B tier, I think I would have them in Dead Sea, because it's just not a healthy playstyle. Darko Savagers are sweet. They do have this ability where they can sometimes get a ridiculous number of wild dice, and then you just know, like, oh wow, I'm just never going to win initiative again for the rest of the game. And one of the things that can be unfun in Warcry is if you think that um, that your future rounds are kind of already determined. Uh, but they have to roll like perfect in round 1 and 2 in order to get that, and I don't think that's going to happen. Or I don't think they can do it in round 2, do they? Tyrannic Cohort can do it in round 2, but I don't think Dark Oath Savagers can. We can actually check this. Thank you to Warcrier. Thank you also, by the way, to the Houston Toad. I put out questions for a silly tier list to do. Oh yeah, you can do it in every round. I still don't think that's too annoying. But yeah, I put out a question in my Discord of, what kind of silly tier list would you guys like to see? And Houston Toad had this great idea, and so I ran with it. So love that. I want to find more ways to incorporate the Discord onto this channel. If you're wondering how to get into it, just join the Patreon. You can do it for as low as $2 a month and have a good time. So back to Dark Oath Savagers being absolutely sweet. They also will, in all of the silly tier lists, all of the non-competitive tier lists, they will always get bonus points for having won the 8 points. They are the champions of first edition. Daughters of Cain. Daughters of Cain are a little bit like Cypher Lords to me, where they are so skewed that sometimes you will hurt your opponent so badly that it's not fun for either of you. Like, if your opponent is playing Daughters of Cain, you can be in this situation where you table them round 2, and then you're just like awkwardly being like, I don't know, I'm sorry. But otherwise, I think they deserve to be in Clear Lake. The only thing they have that's annoying is the Bloodrack Medusa, who has a net that almost never fails. It's 88%, but she has to spend a triple on it. But when you get locked down by the Bloodrack Medusa and you're getting netted every turn, you'll never get out of it, and she has 2-inch reach and you only have 1-inch reach and she's just wailing on you. That's pretty awful. That's two things that could be annoying. They're just so bad is the thing. I'll put them in brackish water and we'll maybe move them later. Flesh Eater Courts. Flesh Eater Courts try to be pretty unfun. I think the bone, which is this triple ability they have that kind of threatens to completely shut a fighter down. In reality, I don't think it's very good. People were pretty hyped about it at first, but I don't think it's very good. It is pretty upsetting, though. King's Entreaty is what it's called. They give you an infected bone, and you have to accept or reject it, and you either can still use abilities, but you might just get taken down automatically, or you just can never use abilities again. This is like a classic thing that, if it were good, would put them all the way up into Dead Sea. It's not that good. They have a netter in the Abhorrent Cardinal who is essentially netting people, but it's way more interesting than a net because it's -1 activation. I think if the Abhorrent Cardinal were really good, they also have a teleport. So if the Abhorrent Cardinal were really good, I think he'd be really annoying, but he's, I think, perfectly pointed where he's competitively playable, but you just don't see him much because Flesh Eaters aren't that good, and usually in Death you're going to add something else instead. Flesh Eater Courts want to be in the Atlantic Ocean, being really annoying to people, but they're just not that good. I think they're kind of brackish because they've also got this teleport, and teleports can be pretty annoying to be on the other side of. But they're just not competitive enough. We haven't seen, I promise you there will be factions in this awful to play against tier, but for the most part, Flesh Eater Courts just aren't, they're not efficiently costed enough for all of their weird tricks to really piss anyone off. They have all these weird tricks. They can survive long enough to do them, but they're not like blowing you off the board. They're not slogging you down or anything like that. So I think putting them in brackish water is good. Fire Slayers are a tough one. So they've got this ability that can take down all your move. They also have um, the ability to just put down a ton of toughness 5 chaff. And to me, that's the one more than the move impairment ability, though that one is pretty real. Fire Slayers, when they are played competitively, are just like very straightforward, pretty uninteractive. They're just putting a ridiculous number of toughness 5 wounds onto the battlefield and just daring you to try to chew through them. And we don't see it a lot competitively, partly because I think aesthetically Fire Slayers don't make very many people happy, and also because it's just not that interesting to pilot. But as much as it's not interesting to pilot, it's equally uninteresting to play against. Man, do they deserve to be in Dead Sea? I think if people actually played Fire Slayers, I would put them in Dead Sea. But you almost never see them, so they get this bonus where it's like, oh, cool, you're doing the weird thing. They also have alternate builds. I made a whole video on how cool Fire Slayers can be. They have alternate builds that could put them in Clear Lake or Deliciously Filtered. But it's like, it's the default build that is so salt-inducing. Maybe that keeps them in this B tier, this brackish water tier. There we go. Gloomspite Gits. Gloomspite Gits are another one that wish they were in Dead Sea. Everything Gloomspite Gits does is designed around being awful to play against. Now, they're not that awful to play against because they're not aggressively pointed, but you look through their guys and it's like Mollog. Mollog is meant to be awful to play against. The -1 forever attack triple is insane. Knowing that something ends at the end of the battle round is something that you can deal with. You can hope to win initiative next round. As soon as someone goes, actually, the whole game is going to be like this, it just reduces that hope. Like, it makes the rest of the game a slog because it reduces the hope that there will be, different varieties in gameplay later on in the game. Having anything not end at the end of the battle round, it's cool because like Mollog is meant to be like a signature piece, and he should get a like uniquely annoying ability. But it's like the way Marathi, everyone hates Marathi in AOS, for example. Mollog is awful in Warcry, but because he's so rare and he's kind of a signature piece, he kind of gets away with it. But that doesn't mean it's good. They also just have like infinite netters. They have 55-point netters that they can put on anywhere. They also have a battle trait that is like super annoying. Once you play against it a couple times, you kind of realize how to play against it and what to worry about and what not to worry about. But the fact that it's always a possibility that they're just going to turn something into a 1, like into a 2, is just like so annoying to have to think about. It's horrible. So Gloomspite wish they could be in Dead Sea. Now the question is, does the fact that they're kind of not that strong take them out of Dead Sea? Like, does that make them more fun to play against? There are also alternate builds of Gloomspite. Like, you could just do a bunch of Squig Hoppers and just ignore all of the unfun stuff, or like some Squig Hoppers and some Sneaky Snufflers. Sneaky Snufflers are actually pretty good, and but like not annoying to play against. Like, they're very balanced and interesting and good in the way they're good. Maybe that brings them down because it's so easy to build a not awful playstyle of Gloomspite Gits. Kind of the same way with Fire Slayers. It's really easy to build Fire Slayers that aren't awful to play against. But man, they've got to be up there in Atlantic Ocean because they are, like, most of the ways to build them are awful. They also have Fanatics, which have the same issue as Cypher Lords, where it's like there is no safe place to point Fanatics, and what's his name? The drunk one, the drunk Underworld's Fanatic. in Zarbag's Gits. What's his name? Why am I blanking on his name? Snurk Sourtongue, right? There is no place where you can point Snurk Sourtongue where he's like fun to play against, right? Like at 130 points, he's balanced, but it's like either he dies right away and the person piloting him is having a terrible time, or he doesn't die right away and gets to crush, and then the person going against him has a terrible time. Fanatics are like that too. So it's like it's this incredibly like antisocial way to make a profile where it's just so skewed that the only outcome is that someone is having a terrible time. Oh man, I'm convincing myself to put them back in Dead Sea. The problem is there's just too many things in Gloomspite that are just kind of goofy and silly and fun. And so I don't want to put them in Dead Sea because it's like it's so easy to build Gloomspite that's not horrible to play against that I just can't put them in the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is reserved for like it's really hard to make a warband that's fun to play against. Idoneth Deepkin. Idoneth Deepkin have some really interesting control abilities. Now, some people just hate being interacted with at all, and so those people are just never going to let them be in Deliciously Filtered. But when I talk about like wishing that there were good interactive abilities that aren't nets, Idoneth Deepkin have those. They do also have a netter. They also have Namarti Thralls, which are not quite on the Fanatics Mirror Blade spectrum, but they're getting there. They're like a little skewed. It's really hard, I think, to point Namarti Thralls in a way that makes them both good and not terrible to play against. Right now, they're just unplayable, and so yeah, the Achillean King is a really cool piece. It can occasionally single-handedly win a game, but it's not among those like really scary titans in the game right now. They've got Dune Claw. This is a clear lake. They wish they were in the ocean, but this is a clear lake. There's just like, yes, there are some things that some people could be annoyed by, but like in general, IDK are just like, they have a lot of cool abilities that are just written to be not as powerful as what the game is being played on. And they just have a lot of profiles that are doing various interesting things that are, again, just not too expensive to be good. But I think Idoneth Deepkin could present a really cool playstyle if everyone is just purposefully playing terrible warbands. Iron Golems. Now, they're a bit boring to pilot. Sorry to all the Iron Golems lovers out there. If you love Iron Golems, don't listen to me. I find Iron Golems a little bit boring to pilot. They were the second warband I painted up. I do like Iron Golems, but they're not that interesting. Their battle trait is kind of cool, though. Yeah, so I don't find them the most compelling, but they've gotten a nice little boost from that battle trait. Either way, there's really nothing annoying about being on the other side of them. I think they're very fair. They present this really cool kind of like platonic simplified Warcry where all their abilities are really tame, but they're not bad. They're just tame. Like they're just very even keel and fair. All their profiles are just kind of decent. Like the ogre is not as scary as the really big scary ogres in this game that can be really unfun to play against. And so he just like lets you know like, hey, some fighters can be big and scary, and that's what this guy's doing. But it's not like particularly unbalanced. They're chaff. They can put a lot of T5 bodies on the board if they want to, but not the way Fire Slayers can, because their T5 is a little bit more expensive than Fire Slayers, and their leader is a little more expensive. So they're not really going to do like that counter control flood thing that Fire Slayers can do. I just think there's nothing really objectionable about Iron Golems. They're really sweet. Iron Jaws. Iron Jaws are incredibly fun to pilot, which is cool. But they're not fun to play against at all. Iron Jaws are so annoying. So they have the battle trait that says that you can't wait when you're playing against Iron Jaws. You technically can, and you can make a wait action and then just like try to bait them into making a move forward, like into the threat range of one of your scary guys. That will never work against someone who knows what they're doing, but you could try it. I've thought about it before. I decided against it, but like I really considered it. Um, so you can do some pretty cute things against their battle trait, but for the most part, their battle trait just like shutting off a part of the game. Um, like there's some people who think that if you're the kind of warband that would wait, then you deserve to be shut down. And from like a competitive standpoint, I think it's a really interesting way to add in counterplay to certain types of warbands in the game. Like from a competitive standpoint, I think a lot of what Iron Jaws does is really interesting. But at the end of the day, having a bunch of fighters that just don't die and your opponent can't like isn't allowed to play their normal play style is just like an incredibly antisocial way to go about things. So I think they're pretty terrible to play against, um, but they're so cool to play as. Like I love them existing, and I personally haven't had unfun times playing against them. But like, man, when they were good, before they got their sort of latest round of nerfs, when they were good, that was like some toxic play style. So yeah, I'm putting them in Atlantic Ocean. They're almost in Dead Sea. Well, no, actually, they're not almost in Dead Sea. Gloomspite Gitz is almost in Dead Sea. They're just solidly in the Atlantic. Um, K-Knight Shadowstalkers wish they could be in the Dead Sea. They do a lot of things that is pretty abhorrent. If you look, so they've got this classic horrible to play against shooter. Where are they? There we go. The Doomfire Warlock with repeater crossbows is just kind of that classic type of fighter who is awful to play against. That's fine though, because they're like strictly worse than the other ones that are awful to play against. But they're trying to do unpleasant things. They just aren't strong enough to pull it off. Um, mm, they have a teleport. That's the thing I'm looking at. Their battle trait is a teleport. Um, Teleports, I think, in general, are something where they're incredibly fun to play as, but they're not that fun to play against. Um, I can't put them in the Atlantic Ocean though. They die so quick. I know that was part of Cypher Lord's deal, but their teleport isn't nearly as integral to their shtick as it is with Cypher Lords, and they don't like do a ton of damage the way Cypher Lords do. Even though they're like equally bad as Cypher Lords, they have the shooting. You could argue they go in Atlantic Ocean. Yeah, okay, we'll put them there. KO. KO is our first Dead Sea Warband. Now, I love playing KO, but KO just sets some people off. There's also a lot of the things in KO that are not good enough anymore, are things that if you made them good, they would be awful to play against. So things like basically everything in KO other than the most popular playstyle is awful to play against if it were good, right? So the balloons, if you were ballooning around with these guys and they were actually good, the move 10 where you can just never hide from the threat range, right? Where like literally, because like a Skywarden with drill launcher or with an engine rigger with skyhook, like 2, 4, 3, 5, you literally cannot hide from it, right? 30 inches, so it could be all the way on one side of the battlefield and it can still shoot something on the complete other end of the battlefield. If that were actually good, like if it weren't 230, if it were 150 or whatever, right? Or whatever the points have to be to make it playable. If Engine Rigger with Skyhook was actually good, it would be the least enjoyable fighter to play against in the game. And that is true of like half of KO's fighters. And so you get like, you can either play them in unplayable ways where they're just not enjoyable to pilot, or you can play them. I think the way I do them is pretty fun. Like I just have a couple shooters and a decent amount of Arcos and then like some cool allies, which is both like pretty powerful and not like the worst thing in the world to play against. But the other build that you can do is just a million Arcanauts, where you just throw like 10 Arcanauts onto the board for 550 points and you still have 450. Like, then you go, where's the, like, you put an Admiral out there, so now you've counted to 700. And so it's like you've already got 12 fighters and you've still got 300 points, and then you just spend the 300 points on like some blessed big thing. And then you have, 13 fighters and just like a ridiculous amount of wounds on the board. Nobody wants to play against that. So it's very, very difficult to make a KO warband that is like really lovable to play against. And that's just a flaw. I think I've done it. I think I've managed it, but you'll have to ask people who I play against when I play KO if that's actually fun to play against. I think in general, like, yeah, it's tough. I think the only thing you can really do is like if you did a whole bunch of the Sky Pikes, I think that would be pretty fun to play against. But it would also be not very good. Sky Pikes are really points efficient, but they're in that spot where like warbands that are doing what Sky Pikes are trying to do are generally not that powerful. So it would be a decent warband, but it wouldn't be like great. Well, yeah, maybe. So that's the alternate play style that is fun to play against. But for the most part, it's like, man, all these fighters, they're either unplayable, but they want to be horrible, or, yeah, it's tough. It's tough with KO. Corn Demons are not objectionable, except in that they just don't do anything. So maybe everyone loves playing against them. Corn Demons are so bad, but there's just no flavor to them. So it's like, it's brackish water, because it's like you're just sipping this tea that hasn't been steeped long enough, and it's just not cool. Their chaff is unplayable, so you don't really want to bring allies in there. Their abilities, they literally don't have hero abilities, so you don't want to play them just as them. Their battle trait doesn't do anything. Like, Corn Demons are a non-entity in this game, and their only thing is they have this charge ability, but I would say they're so boring that they're actually boring to play against as well as Pilot. Even though, I would love if every tournament I only played against Corn Demons. That would be great. But I think as far as warbands you could play against, Corn Demons are not that fun. Now, Corn Mortals are probably like, I was going to call them like the most fun. They're like chill fun. Corn Mortals are just like relaxed, chill time. They're one of the most fun warbands to play against. They don't have like that much excitement in their abilities, so like not everyone loves playing as them. But like all their profiles are just like solidly fine on their level. So like the Mighty Lord of Corn is just like a perfectly like slightly above average combat piece for what he does. Most of their profiles are kind of like that. Blood Reavers are probably like the most balanced chaff in the game. They have some cool little alternate sculpts that kind of do a thing, like the Gore Chosen of Drom have some interesting abilities, but not so interesting that it can really like carry a warband, but it's a little bit of fun. And then, Cornlists don't read all that cool or exciting or hype, but then when you just put them on the board, like, your opponent's never going to just feel like, oh man, what that Corn player is doing is completely unfair. But you can still put a warband together that's powerful enough to win a decent number of games, and I think that's like kind of the platonic ideal. I think that the absolute ideal warband is like Corn, but you just like rewrite a third of their leader abilities to be more interesting, and then you've got the platonic ideal warband in the game. They've got like a lot of really cool stuff that they do, and none of it is particularly annoying to face off against. Even the pull from the Slaughter Priest is like, there's a lot of counterplay to it. So yeah, some people don't like being interacted with, some people don't like being pulled around the board, but it's still something that you can kind of get through, and you can just like have interesting games around it. Cruel Boys. Cruel Boys should be over in Dead Sea. People don't complain about Cruel Boys nearly enough. I'm going to put them in brackish water. They are Stab Grots are dumb, way too cheap. Uh, a buddy of mine just played in his first ever tournament, and he got tabled by Cruel Boys. And his review of Warcry is that Gut Rippers are too fat, which I thought was so funny. He just couldn't get through the Gut Rippers. And I think that's very reasonable. But usually when Cruel Boys are doing their thing, the thing that you complain about is the parts of Cruel Boys that aren't Cruel Boys. Like the allies are doing insane stuff, but they also have Shank. You know what? I'm putting them into Atlantic Ocean. People just don't complain enough about Cruel Boys. Shank is ridiculous. I think Gut Rippers are like a really cool fighter, and I wish there was a little bit more emphasis on them in Cruel Boys lists. But Stab Grot is just so good. I don't think it's fair to put them in Atlantic Ocean. They're not the most fun to deal with, like the way Fire Slayers and Feck have some annoying stuff. But it is the most annoying stuff about Cruel Boys is the stuff that comes from outside of Cruel Boys. Lumineth Realm Lords. Lumineth wish they could be in Dead Sea, but they're not nearly good enough. They have this like Shining Company castle play style. I can't remember what it's actually called. It's not called Shining Company, but they've got this castle play style where they make it hard to kill, but all their fighters die so quick and have so few wounds anyway that it doesn't actually work. The cows are actually really fun, kind of in every way. Like that alternate build of KO that I talked about with the Sky Pike. Cow elves from Lumineth are just like that guy, but you can actually buy them. They're not as good as that guy, but they're like way more purchasable. Man, do I need to put them in Deliciously Filtered? They have a lot of fighters, so a little bit like KO, Lumineth Realm Lords have a lot of fighters that if they were pointed into playability would be awful to play against. The Stone Mage quad is not fun. But like Wind Chargers would be awful to play against, and so would Sentinels if they were pointed to be actually good. Well, I don't know if Sentinels would be awful to play against because they only have 8 wounds. Man, I'm talking myself into giving them... What is Mayari's ability again? I forget. It's a -1 attack bubble, but it costs a triple. It's not really objectionable. Yeah, Clear Lake sounds right for Lumineth. I feel like I almost wanted to put them in the... Like, in AOS, they're in Dead Sea. They're so terrible to play. Like, people complain constantly about Lumineth in AOS. And so I think I maybe showed up with that bias at first, but now I'm realizing they don't really have any of the like awful AOS vibes in Warcry. Like, Lumineth Realm Lords play like a completely different non-Lumineth faction, partly because it's like the cow team is the team that's actually good in Warcry, where as opposed to like the annoying abilities. And the annoying abilities are written to not be annoying in Warcry, like Realm Scribe. Realm Scribe is an incredibly cool control ability that you just don't see because that fighter isn't good enough. But I think it's a really cool ability. Now, just -1 crit is not high enough like impact to matter enough so you don't see it competitively, but there's a lot of cool stuff going on in Lumineth. You know what? I'm going to put them in Delicious Filtered. I think there's a lot to love with Lumineth. Nighthaunt. Nighthaunt want to be in Dead Sea. They've got the triple that just does an absurd amount of burst damage. They've got the triple that does, that resurrects anything you want. The problem is they're so killable, they're so easy to kill that those triples feel a little bit more balanced, so they're not awful to play against. They're, I think, pretty reasonable to play against. Maybe they even go in brackish water. Um, the thing is, they want, like, Nighthaunt want to be awful to play against so badly. And the fact that they're reasonable to play against is like not their fault. No, but they're reasonable. It's brackish. Like there's a lot of unfun stuff going on in Nighthaunt. They're so fast. They all fly. So having your opponent not care about terrain when you do is really annoying. Um, but the fact is, just like their base profiles are just so eminently killable. And there's a lot of counterplay at the list building stage where, like, if you expect Nighthaunt and you just have a couple guys who hit hard and have a lot of wounds, like Nighthaunt can never do anything about an ogre or a Fomo Crusher or something like that. Um, so I'm tempted to put them just in brackish, and they're also just, they don't win enough to be like super, super annoying. I know that Gloom Spites and maybe they should, I'm not putting them in Atlantic. There are reasons to, but they don't actually succeed at doing the awful things that they want to be doing. But then by that, you could say Cypher Lords should be in brackish water then by that count. No, this is supposed to be irrespective of power level, or not completely irrespective of it, but yeah, I think they have to be in Atlantic Ocean, but I could really see a reason to put them in brackish. I think they're not the worst. Nurgle Demons are beautiful and wonderful, and I won't hear anything else. Nurgle Mortals are really cool, and they're going to go actually where Demons should go. So Nurgle Mortals are really good at doing their thing, and their thing just doesn't win games. It's really funny. They're just like incredibly good at like lumbering forward and being beefy, but they just don't score any points, and they don't. So maybe they're actually brackish because it's like sometimes you can kind of see the light dying in your opponent's eyes when they're playing Nurgle Mortals. Though they're not that bad is the thing. Like when I see them in tournament, like their win rate is actually high 40s, because when I see them in tournaments, they always beat the like one box bespoke stuff, and like like a new player, if you don't have the tools to just like hilariously outscore Nurgle Mortals, you can really lose to them. So like they are doing their thing. It's just that some games are just so auto loss for them that, again, I'm someone who doesn't like when my opponent knows they're going to lose from the very first jump. I think that's just horrible to play against. And Nurgle Mortals can kind of create games like that. Nurgle Demons, since their nerf was so much bigger than it needed to be, I think they're pretty pleasant to play against. Like they're not doing anything really unfair. They can't be in Delicious filtered though, because they do have a reaction that reduces incoming damage, and it can be a little gotcha. Reactions in general, I think, are the biggest flaw in Warcry design, where I like the idea of making there be something on the opponent's activation that you have to talk about, or like that you can do. The problem is it's the only part of Warcry that's ever gotcha. Everything else is like totally reasonable and like very chill, and then just reactions exist, and they're like the one gotcha mechanic. So it's like any warband that really revolves around their reaction, I think, can't really be indeliciously filtered. Not that reactions shouldn't exist, but like they can just be a little gotcha. And Nurgle, it's like if you aren't killing the plague bearers, you are having a terrible time. But Sloppity is so cool. I don't know. I'll put them in Clear Lake. Ogres. Man, do ogres get to be in Dead Sea? The one thing that makes me not want to put ogres in Dead Sea is that it's actually really easy to make a pleasant ogre warband to play against. So ogre leaders are awful to play against. Like the big three ogre leaders, the Crusher, the Gutlord, and the Tyrant, are just like so tough to play against. Although the Tyrant, I think, is a little bit more lovable because the opponent spends so many points on the Tyrant, right? Because if they're gonna buff him, it's like 355 points, right, for the +1 attack version. The opponent spends so many points on the Tyrant that it can kind of actually come all the way around and be fun to play against. But in a really competitively put together list, the Tyrant is like awful to play against, just like the Gutlord and the Crusher are. But ogres have so many cool guys that are like Bloodpelt Hunter, and I think that the Firebelly and the Butcher are pretty cool, and the Thunderfist isn't cool, but like he's not awful to play against either. Maybe he is. I don't know. Artillery pieces aren't the most fun to play against, but like if you play against someone who's just got like, here are my 3 club gluttons and my 1 butcher, and then I've just got like 3 Noblars evening it out. Like that's actually a really fun warband to play against. So they can't be in Dead Sea, but I will just say Noblars of every variety are awful to play against. The fact that there is a 40-point Noblar that has more wounds, Bushwhacka is one of the dumbest fighters in the entire game. Hrothgorn, this whole warband was a mistake. Whoever designed Hrothgorn's Man Trappers, listen, this is a pro Johnny Bracken channel, but god damn it, Johnny, why did you do this? I assume it was you. Anyway, everything about the design of this Underworld's warband is just awful and should never have been released into the game. And then the ogre, the big ogre leaders, like the 3 really good ones, are just really tough to play against. And all of that would get it into Dead Sea, but the thing is, like, it's so easy to build an ogre warband that's not awful to play against. I think they have to be in Atlantic Ocean. I think because you can do a lot of things in ogres that are, maybe not delicious to play against, but like are Clear Lake to play against. But it's just because the main thing they're supposed to be doing competitively is Dead Sea. I think they have to be in the Atlantic. Osiarch Bone Reapers are like Fire Slayers. They're a little bit nicer to play against than Fires. Well, no, they're exactly like Fire Slayers. Whoopsies. They're exactly like Fire Slayers, where one of the main ways to play them, the one that's probably correct, is to just put out a sea of toughness 5, very cheap fighters, and then say like, hey, I bet you can't deal with these guys, and then just counter. And that would be Dead Sea. But there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. Stalkers are really cool, even though they are one of those things, like you couldn't put Stalkers in Deliciously Filtered because they do have that like kind of gotcha pounce double that's just way too cheap for what it does, and it's like this standard thing in the game for some reason. But Stalkers are pretty cool. Like if you had the Ossifector, a Morkai, and so you get that like kind of flying big damage off of a triple thing, and then you have like 2 Stalkers, all of a sudden you have like a really fun warband to play against. But then there's the other build that would be very Atlantic Ocean, very annoying to play against. So I think they end up right in the middle in Brackish Water. Scions of the Flame are really sweet. They're not good, but they have a really sweet playstyle when you spam a bunch of the 3-inch range ones, but they don't get to do the thing like Marauders get to do with their 3-inch range, where they can also heal. They instead have like a terrible reaction that doesn't do anything. Their battle trait doesn't do anything. All of their fighters are just super fair. So I think maybe they get into Deliciously Filtered, because there's just nothing really objectionable about Scions. Their guys die, but not so fast. So like everything kind of happens at the same rate that it should. Oh yeah, their reaction is just like a reverse counter, which is, I think, the most fun reaction that is also good, because it's like, are they hitting on 5s? We counter. Are they hitting on 3s? We reverse counter. And it's like, it's strong, but it's not annoying to play against. None of their abilities are particularly objectionable because their abilities are just like these mediocre burn spells um, that are, just not really doing much. Um, well, I mean, they have the one mediocre burn spell that's actually playable in Inferno, but that one's not like annoying or anything because it's not one-shotting anything off the board. It's not like the Horns of Hashut one. So, yeah, I think they get into Deliciously Filtered. Seraphon. Now, Seraphon might be like ogres here, where it's really easy to build a Seraphon list that is awful to play against because the Slan is awful to play against, and the triple is really annoying to play against because they can just like anytime they want, they can just put an absurd amount of damage onto the board in one spot, and so you have to always be kind of ready for it. And it's just like, again, one shot kills I'm against, and they have guys that can just put like 35 damage out in one attack. But it's still balanced because like all of their fighters are pointed like they have to be using that ability to be good, and so all of the activations they do that aren't using that ability are really balanced. But then they also have the frog, and the frog is like probably the least fun fighter to play against in the game, even though the frog's not that good. I go back and forth on whether the frog should be nerfed because it's like it's really not that great competitively, but it is so awful to play against when it rolls well. I don't think we can put Seraphon in Dead Sea. I think it's too easy to make a fun to play against version of them. But I will say they do have a little bit of that KO flavor where some of their fighters that are not good, if they were good, would be the least fun things to play against in the game. And I know this because in first edition, they were widely considered to be one of the least fun factions to play against in the entire game. And it was all because of, where is he? Yeah, this little guy, the Bolt Spitter and Moonstone Club Skink. This guy used to be 65 instead of 75, and those 10 points, man, like with cheap fighters, small points changes can matter a lot. This guy is terrible at 75 points. At 70 points would be balanced, and at 65 was unconscionable. Just awful. And it's not this one actually. It's this one, the Javelin and Starbuckler. Or no, it's this one, the 2-1. No, they changed the profile, didn't they? Either way, it doesn't matter. The point is, there was a 65-point ranged skink that could do all the Seraphon things and was just awful to play against. Also, the Salamander shtick is pretty cool because of where the skink that gives him the ability, the skink handler, is pointed correctly. The Salamander is pointed correctly, so none of it is bad to play against. But man, if you made them like competitive, Salamanders would be awful to play against. So they have a little bit of that KO flavor there, but you can make totally reasonable Seraphon lists that are just super fun for everybody. Like if you have, just a bunch of Saurus in your list, and it's like, yeah, you have that kind of Sword of Damocles ability where it's just like you're super underpowered until you use the ability, but so they wouldn't be able to go in Deliciously Filtered, but like you can make a Clear Lake list out of Seraphon. The problem is it's like they're trying to do Dead Sea stuff at all times. So I think that this is like this classic formula that's landing all these Atlantic Ocean armies in the Atlantic Ocean. Skaven, you can't actually make a fun list with Skaven right now. They're good in every facet because the battle trait. In order to make a fun Skaven list to play against, you have to just like completely willfully ignore any kind of list building ideas. There is just nothing there's nothing fun or nice about Skaven. And I say that having played a decent amount of Skaven. I like Skaven. Skaven are incredibly fun to pilot, but All of the rat ogre shenanigans are awful, and the main thing that's awful is like the battle trait. Resurrections, full health resurrections just shouldn't be in the game. I think like having access to it automatically puts you in Dead Sea. Slanesh, clearly deliciously filtered. Everybody hates Vexmore, and that's just a fact. Um, Other than Vexmore, it's like they're pretty reasonable. They have that -1 attack debuff on a double, which a lot of people don't like playing against, but I think it's pretty reasonable. It ends at the end of the round, unlike, Mollog or stuff like that. It's just like a little bit stronger than every other team that can do it. It's just Vexmore that kind of ruins them and puts them in brackish water. Also, like Demonettes are very fun to play against because they die quickly, but they also do their like attack thing. It's like Demonettes are a very fun archetype for a fighter, but yeah, Vexmore is there. The other Slanesh also has to be in brackish water. Slake Slash is not a fun guy to play against. I think, those doubles where you just get a free bonus move action are just very silly on a lot of fighters who are very killy. They also just have the 55-point homunculi where it's just like very dumb, where you play against them and it's like they're spamming the guy who is specifically supposed to be the rarest guy in the faction. Like there's real flavor reasons why they're not that fun. But like none of that is as objectionable as any of the stuff going on over here. So they don't get into Atlantic Ocean. And even then, like I don't think that's as objectionable as like what like Fire Slayers would be at the top of brackish water, along with Ossiarch Bone Reapers. Actually, when I look at all of these, I wonder if Daughters of Cain they can't really hang with all of these guys in terms of annoying stuff they can do. I think Daughters of Cain have to be in Clear Lake, even though Daughters of Cain want to be annoying to play against. They just don't achieve it. Yeah. Slaves to Darkness. Right here in brackish water, they have one of the least pleasant reactions in the game. But everything else they do is pretty fair. Maybe that actually means they're in Clear Lake. They just have an awful reaction, but everything else is like totally reasonable. None of their abilities are really awful to play against. The Varangard has fallen off recently in terms of play, but is just as good as ever. But not that annoying to play against because there's a ton of fighters who can beat the Varangard one-on-one. It's just like, can you lock him down to fight him one-on-one? They also have like cool Aura Cry abilities. I think they deserve to be in Clear Lake. They just have the reaction, and that's the only annoying thing about them. All right. 3, 2, and 1. All right. 3, 2, and 1. So now we get to Soulblight, and they are definitely at the top of Dead Sea tier. They are maybe I'll encounter a less fun to play against warband than Soulblight, but I doubt it. They are my second to least favorite models in the game. That's not true. Cities of Sigmar are my least favorite models in the game. Death Rattle Soulblight, I hate the look of them. The vampires are awesome. I love Tilda Swinton Bat Hair Vampire. I love Blood Knights. Some of the random, like I like all the werewolf vampires, I think are really cool. So actually a lot of Soulblight sculpts I really like, but the Death Rattle stuff is like my least favorite crap in the game. But it's the full health res that really is just unsafe at any speed. It is so obnoxious, and it makes the Skaven one look like child's play. Like I almost want to put Skaven over in like brackish water or Clear Lake, because the Skaven full health res can't manipulate the scoring on objective play and even most kill missions. You can just like cheat the scoring of the mission with your resurrection, which is the dumbest mechanic of all time. The fact that that is in the game is so stupid. It's like Warcry is generally a pretty well designed but poorly developed game, but that is just like an element of game design that is just inexcusable in every way. The fact that you can just like for the cost of a triple, you can just make it so that things that happened in the game just never happened. It's absurd. Um, so just having that as your like core scoring or like your just core ability that you're doing all the time is awful. Now I know Nighthaunt has it, but the fact that Soulblight can do it for like full health is crazy. The other thing that Soulblight has is a whole bunch of Underworlds teams. And something that is really cool and adds a ton of flavor to the game is when you have an Underworlds warband in your Warcry warband. They usually are written with really cool abilities, stuff like that. It's awesome. Soulblight has a million Underworlds warbands, a little bit like Cruel Boys also, where it's just so easy to make every single profile in your list completely different and like different to the point where it matters how different they are. And so there's like your opponent can't just be checking the stats every single time they make a move. The game just wouldn't end quick enough. So with Soulblight, you're constantly either you are gotchaing your opponent with your ridiculously huge number of similar but not quite the same stat blocks, or if you're not gotchaing them, it means that you're just taking 2.5 hours to finish your game, which holds up everyone in the tournament, and it's just impossible to, resolve any kind of rounds in a reasonable time with multiple Soulblight players on the field. So I hate everything about Soulblight. It's not just this, it's not just that. They're doing multiple things at once that would get them into Dead Sea tier, and it is crazy that this has been allowed to continue. They also have the benefit of actually being strong enough that these things matter. Like all three of these factions are pretty darn good, and that's you can't be in Dead Sea tier unless you are both awful to play against and really strong, like strong enough for it to matter. If things were personal, I would create a new tier just for Soulblight, and I would actually have Skaven and Brackish. I actually enjoy playing against Skaven. They just do a lot of stuff that I recognize are just like awful for anyone other than me. Like I'm a bit of a sicko. The way that Skaven works, I kind of like trying to solve that puzzle. Soulblight not so much, because it's just like it's a free triple. And I actually even think that Skaven are better than Soulblight, but Soulblight are less fun to play against. Spire Tyrants, Atlantic Ocean. Spire Tyrants' whole shtick is we have the second best netter in the game, but our netter is spammable. That's just like fundamentally unfun. The other thing, they have the Bestigor, which is like, he's a cool meme, but he's not like interesting enough to overcome that fact that the leader is also attacks. If someone said that they should be in Brackish, I wouldn't be mad at them, but the fact that it's like all about net spam is very silly to me. These guys just aren't interesting enough to go in Delicious. They used to have a really awful playstyle. In first edition, for anyone who wants a little history lesson, Splintered Fang used to be absolutely atrocious to play against because the snake, where is it? The snake, which is now 90 points, was like 60 points and awful to play against. But now that's not the case. And also the snake had more wounds at that time. I think it had like 8 wounds and was like 65 points, maybe 60 points. And yeah, it was terrible to play against. But now they just don't do anything well enough. Like they have these reasonable chaff fighters. Like you could fill your warband with a bunch of these guys and it would be fine. But yeah, their abilities are just kind of, they're neat, but they're not that good. They have the guaranteed net, which I think very much stops them from being in Delicious Filtered, because a guaranteed net is pretty unfun. Maybe they should be in Brackish, but nothing else they do is very objectionable. The leader can be part of an extremely unfun warband to play against, but you have to do work to get to that level of unfun. And as opposed to like where these ones, everything in Atlantic Ocean, you have to do a ton of fun or a ton of work not to be unfun. All right. These guys, they don't exist anymore. You can't buy them. I'm putting them in brackish water. Stormcast simply can't be in Delicious Filtered, even at their most enjoyable, because their whole shtick of just like bespoke factions can't kill us and can't deal with anything we do, and that's just what we do, is like just kind of unpleasant. But they don't do anything like super unfair other than that. These guys have Thundercats, which are pretty cool. They have like a lot of pretty medium, aggressively mediocre melee guys. You can actually make some pretty reasonable warbands with Stormcast wizards, but nobody does because you can't buy the models, and I guess the models weren't all that beloved when they came out. I have a whole bunch of them. I actually really liked them. They kind of helped get me into wargaming, but most people don't seem to like them. I'm going to put them right in the middle. Maybe they should be in Clear Lake. These ones in particular just don't do anything particularly unpleasant. Like at least Thunderstrike and Warrior Chamber have all the paladins, where like sometimes you just get paired against paladins and just like your warband just simply cannot clear them, and they do so much damage that you just die. But the wizards don't really do that. Vanguard is also kind of brackish because they're just so shooty. Like if Vanguard were good, they're a lot like, the warbands where you wouldn't be able to make a fun list to play against if they were good. So Vanguard was, one of the unpopular warbands in first edition, mostly because the bird was really cheap. But they have a whole bunch of people like these long strikes. If long strikes were good, 1-5, 4-10, that'd just be unbearable. It'd be so annoying. So I think that they have to go in Atlantic. I think I'm happy with this for the 4 main chamber, or the 4 old chambers. Sacrosanct, way more pleasant than the others. Although, if you could fit more Thundercats in a list, it would be pretty unfun. But I think Thundercats are pretty cool and pretty lovable. Sylvaneth, I want to put in Clear Lake. Sylvaneth are so lovable. The problem is they teleport and they net. And Sylvaneth just have this shtick where they do a lot of things that can make you really mad. I have seen someone rage quit a tournament because their opponent was on Sylvaneth. That's just how they can be. So there aren't really a lot of factions that can say that, just because teleporting with a treasure in your hand is incredibly uncool if you don't warn your opponents beforehand. Their reaction's totally reasonable, but yeah, it's the teleporting and the netting that I think brings them down. They're just so lovable that like nobody really has beef with Sylvaneth, and they die so quickly. Maybe they should be in brackish because they die so quick. But then if they were, we'd have to put Cypher Lords in and K-Knight Shadowstalkers in. It's not their fault that they're not that good, right? And they're not. Yeah, I think Atlantic Ocean is just a very reasonable spot for them. Tarantulos is classic. The things they do are full health res and nets. Those are like 2 of the least enjoyable things in the game to go against. So yeah, easily in Dead Sea. Tarantulos, we don't even have to talk about it. These are one. If Tzeentch Demons were good, they would be worse than Soulblight. They would be by far everyone's least favorite faction in the game. As is, they're not that good, and so people are like, ooh, Ephelum, fun and sweet, and like, ooh, Iridescent Horror, like, what a lovable guy. But don't be fooled. If Pink Horrors were actually good, you would absolutely hate Tzeentch Demons. Their shtick is like just incredibly, the split is just incredibly annoying. It's annoying in AOS as well. They also have really good artillery pieces that would be annoying if they were actually good. So I would say Tzeentch Demons are trying to be one of the least fun factions in the game, and it's not their fault that they're just not good enough to do it. Tzeentch Mortals kind of have the issue where they don't play the way you think they should play. Like they're all just a bunch of beat sticks, even though they're supposed to be like more wizardy. They have a lot of cool things going. Maybe they should be in Clear Lake. They have a lot of cool things going on, but they're a little bit like Seraphon, where you can make versions of them that are just trying to like wait until they hit you with the massive 30 damage burst, the way like Seraphon and Nighthaunt are. But like Kyric Acolyte builds are just kind of cute archery stuff. It's tough. I think they belong in Brackish Water, and now that Tiermaker has frozen, Tiermaker has been slow all day. I don't know what's going on. There we go. Now we can put it in Brackish Water. They have some Atlantic Ocean tendencies, but Zangors are just kind of running around being easy to kill. Like there's a lot that they do that's very reasonable and fun to play against. It's just that there's a little bit of weird stuff going on too. Man, I kind of want to put them in Clear Lake now, because it's like the only thing they have that's annoying is Guided by the Past. That's only one thing. That's not enough. These guys have other annoying things going on about them. All right, the faction where their whole shtick is that all of our guys are netters is classic Atlantic Ocean. If they were good, they would be Dead Sea. Unmade are just like designed to be the least fun faction in the game. They're just not strong enough to pull it off. They're basically like Cypher Lords that way. Untamed Beasts. Are Untamed Beasts delicious? They have the pull ability, so that is something that some people might not like. They have bonus attack abilities, which can feel a little bit annoying, and they also have the reaction that reduces incoming damage, which can also be a little unpleasant sometimes. So they have a few things that are not awesome to play against. I guess Iron Golems also have that reaction. And they have a 55-point chaff, which you could then like spam and kind of play a reaction control strategy if you wanted to. But mostly what they're doing is just like cool fun shtick. I think that because you can make an unpleasant warband out of Untamed Beasts, I think they have to be in Clear Lake. Otherwise, they're just like very platonically cool. These guys, they're not good enough in game to be in Delicious Filtered. They're so bad in game that they have to be. Maybe they even go in Brackish, because it can be really unfun when your opponent. They're Corn Demons. So they go in Brackish because it can just be super unfun when your opponent like realizes from round 1, or like you're playing in round 2, and it's like in the first round of round 2 your opponent has realized that they will go 0-4 today, and that can just be incredibly unfun to play against in any kind of tournament environment. In casual play, here I'm going to put them in Brackish. In casual play, I think you could put them in Clear Lake sometimes. But in casual play, they just don't do enough. Like, if you're playing the same person, twice a month, and they're just bringing Chaos Legionnaires, it's like you are limited to how much you can explore the fun stuff that you can bring, because your opponent just can't do fun stuff, so you have to match them, and that's tough too. So yeah, I think they're just too Corn Demons-y to be anything other than Brackish. Horns of a Shoot. They've taken so many nerfs, they might be in Brackish now. Their shtick is kind of unfun, right? They've got this flamethrower, they've got the Ash Bomb that is like a -1 attack and a -1 toughness aura. Their whole shtick is like, we want to have some efficient chaff, and we want to use a triple that ruins your day. I guess they have to go in Atlantic Ocean. Yeah. Hunters of Huanchi are incredibly unpleasant to play against. I've played against them. The Huanchi reaction is like awful. It's so annoying. They're super fast, which speed is cool until it's like really speed and it's cheap. Cheap speed is not cool. The worst times in first edition were because cheap speed was too easy to come across, and Huanchi just have so much cheap speed, and they can just put like 13 fighters on the board so easily. And any warband that just can like exhale and have 13 bodies like can't be any higher than brackish water. And then they've also got other annoying things, like the leader has a really annoying ability. So oh man, should they be in Dead Sea? I forgot how annoying the leader's ability is. Here, check it out. It's the worst. um yeah, truly it is the worst. Where are Hunters of Huanchi? Here we go. Yeah, Hurl Bolus. Um, well, it is only on a triple. Maybe it's not that horrible. And then they also have the Bellow of the Carnosaur. So they have a lot of like disruption triples, and then they just have like an absurd number of bodies that are really fast, and you can just never touch them. They also released with that very poorly worded reaction where like people thought that you could like get out of taking damage with it. Um, mm, yeah, I don't think it deserves to be in Dead Sea. It's bad to play against, but it's not that bad to play against. Jade Obelisk are pretty cool. I don't think they quite get to be in Delicious Filtered because they do have like ridiculously efficient combat stats. Like if you have a warband that doesn't put out a ton of damage, you can just accidentally get into combat with Jade Obelisk and just be blown away. Like the whole point with Jade is like they can't put a ton of bodies on the board and they can't move very fast. So you just first you go in round one, you go outscore them by a million, and then in round two you pick your fights and they don't pick the fights, and that's how you win. But if you're kind of a newer player and you don't know that, what do you even do against them? But I think overall that's a pretty minor issue, and so that's why I'm putting them in Clear Lake, is because like yes, if your opponent has a whole bunch of obelisk bearers and you can never clear the obelisk bearers, you might have a bad time, but for the most part, they're pretty innocent. Rotmire Creed are absolutely in Delicious Filtered. Yes, they have a net, but it's a 1-inch net. I have been hit with the move up, net you, disengage off you, which is pretty annoying. But for the most part, it's like they're trying to do these triple damage hitting abilities, or they're trying to put these guys on. I mean, they can put some like wounds blessed pretty tough chaff and just flood the board with that. But even that, I played against that and it wasn't unfun. Like it was perfectly reasonable. Yeah, I think they're delicious. These guys are in Atlantic Ocean. So Askerian Trueblades aren't good enough to be in Dead Sea, but what they're trying to be is so annoying. They're trying to have these like super swingy attack profiles that either do nothing or do everything, like like 2-6-3-4 or 3-6-4-6, and they have these control abilities. Like I think that Bestial Familiar and Terrifying Howl were hoping to be these like devastating control abilities. Now, I actually think control. Maybe I'm talking myself into it. They should be in brackish. Non-net control abilities, I think, are important to get into the game. So let's not completely punish a faction for having some of them. But for the most part, like they're trying to be obnoxious. They're trying to be this super swingy team where like the dice are everything. And I just don't think that that's super healthy for the game. Royal Beast Flayers are definitely in Atlantic Ocean. The whole thing of like, we hold back, and then we get a bunch of bonus movements. Like this is like the fifth most annoying thing that Soulblight can do is like the Zandara shtick. That is the most annoying thing that Royal Beast Flayers do. So like it's not, there are levels to this being annoying, which is the whole point of the tier list. But the whole like we're gonna wait 5 times to start the game, and then we're gonna use our bonus action abilities to make it so that those waits don't matter and we still get to where we're going. And then we have our damage ability. So it's like the whole time they just don't have to use the combat step to fight you. Man, do they deserve to be in Dead Sea? Maybe they should be in Dead Sea. I don't know. I don't think so. It's just like it's very brutal. I can't imagine being a new player going against a tuned Royal Beast Flayer list and like you just drown. I don't know what you do. Claws of Karanak want to be annoying so bad. Claws of Karanak are trying to be the least enjoyable faction in the game because their whole thing is they just get to chain inspiring presences for a double. They can go like, we're going to do it here, then here, then here, then here. The issue with that is that none of their fighters do anything, and so those inspiring presences like aren't that good. But they want to be bad. They they mean poorly. They're harmless, but they mean poorly. Quester Soulsworn, perfectly reasonable. They do have the issue where sometimes certain types of casual warbands just can't kill them, and that can be unpleasant. But they don't have it as much of an issue as the other Stormcast do because they're just honestly just not as efficient on the board. They do have a bonus action double and multiple bonus action doubles, which can be kind of annoying. But I think in practice it's only annoying when they're allies, because I've played some Quester Soulsworn, like I painted them and played them. I play them a lot more in AOS. Every AOS game I've ever played, I was playing my Quester Soulsworn. I played them a lot less in Warcry, but I've played them enough to feel like they feel very fair in Warcry. Other than the thing where a lot of bespokes can't shift them, I think they're really sweet. I think it's a cool playstyle. I actually don't think they're that fun to pilot, but they're just very smooth and chill and like, drink a beer and play one Quester Soulsworn game. Yeah, sign me up. These guys are brackish. I feel like they're like the definition of brackish. You can flood the board with very killable fighters in Darkling Covens. Now, whether your opponent is happy about that or not, I don't know. But otherwise, they're totally fair other than the board flood thing. So you can like very easily put like 13 or 14 fighters into play. But aside from that, they're a very cool, just like very, not objectionable faction. If anything, they suffer from their abilities not being interesting enough, where your opponent doesn't get to see cool shit happen. That's okay. Castellites want to be in Atlantic Ocean tier because they are based on reaction play. And like I said earlier in the video, I think reactions are like the one part of Warcry that wasn't designed as well as I'd like in terms of being very gotcha forward. But I don't think the reactions come out as gotcha with Castellites because they have to set up this little castle. So it's like they're screaming at you that they're going to play reaction based right from the beginning of the game. And so you can kind of prepare for it. In fact, you know what? I'm putting them in Clear Lake because I think that they're pretty fair. They have some powerful things they can do, but like the Ogre Warhulk seems like he's going to be really terrifying, and then he actually turns out to just be a very reasonable fighter for his points. Like he is correctly costed, he is killable if you really want to kill him, he's ignorable if you decide that you want to counterplay him that way. Like he's big and scary, but he's the type of big and scary that really fits within the context of the game. And then the rest of them, it's reaction control, but it's a much less gotcha version of reaction control than all the other ones, which I think is cool. Dispossessed, a lot of people hate Dispossessed, but I don't think they're that hateable. The thing that I think brings Dispossessed up, maybe even into brackish, is that I legitimately think that their reaction is the coolest reaction in the game. That combo playstyle is really sweet. You can make some really wild, awesome Dispossessed warbands that are just like awesome to play against and awesome to pilot. Problem is, Over My Dead Body is like one of the least fun abilities in the game to go against, which maybe should put them down here. I'm conflicted about Dispossess. Let me know in the comments if you would disagree with Dispossess, because I think that one's really debatable. I really don't know which of these it should have. Man, I'll put them here just to be snarkier. Vulcan, awesome. The only thing is the dice are very, very swingy with Vulcan Flameseekers. They have that gotcha reaction where they turn crits into hits. They have, I'm talking myself into brackish. They've got a gotcha reaction. Their damage output is like very difficult to predict because it can just be so up and down. They have a triple that can be really broken, but they're like, none of their guys are that cheap, so they're not putting a lot of bodies on the board. Yes, the abilities can look broken, but like they're not that scary. You know what? They're in Clear Lake. They're lovable. If this were a tier list about what's the most fun to pilot, I would have them SSS tier. I think they're one of the most fun warbands to pilot in the entire game. But to play against, it's like not ideal. They've got the gotcha stuff, but otherwise they're pretty sweet. Gorger Mawpack, not fun at all, but not in Atlantic Ocean. Gorger Mawpack just have this issue where like sometimes you'll get into this point when you're playing against Gorgers where your opponent realizes they can't win right from round one, and then you're in that awkward position. Sometimes you're playing against Gorgers and they table you on turn 2, which sucks. Maybe they're in Atlantic Ocean. You can get fun games against Gorgers, but I think they have to be here. I think they're too skewy. They're just like, they don't really fit the way the game is played. And so it's like getting tabled turn 2 is not fun. Winning because your opponent just doesn't even interact with the mission is not fun. And it's like 2/3 of missions, Gorger Mawpack just don't even interact with what's going on. I don't know. I didn't really dock Nurgle Mortals for that as much, but they're not nearly as bad offenders. They have a similar issue to Gorger Mawpack where it's like some missions they just don't interact with the mission, but it's not nearly as egregious here. These guys suck to play against. They're so cool, but they suck to play against. The Egg Grot probably has the least fun reaction in the game. Rip It Out is not fun. Monkey is so cool though. Monkey gets them into the Atlantic Ocean tier. Yeah, their whole shtick is like sneaky gotcha stuff, which is, very Cruel Boys, but it's not fun to play against. Now, if I were putting fun to pilot, again, they'd be S tier. I think they're very well designed because, yeah, they have stuff that's super annoying to play against, but that's okay. This is a strategy game. Like, you expect sometimes your opponent is going to do things that annoy you. But they're like super, super fun in terms of, they have lots of really cool abilities. Mostly people, I think, have cut the Bone Saw, even though the Bone Saw is really cool. Most people have cut the Balla Boy, even though the Balla Boy is really cool. But they just have like a really deep bench of cool stuff they can do. But all you see is like Rip It Out, which is just like big damage at range, which is not fun. And you also have like a reaction that completely neuters anyone who wants to like walk around, which is not fun. So it's like either your opponent doesn't play the game or you kill them at range, which is both terrible. So they're definitely in Atlantic Ocean. Wildercore are Dead Sea. Infinite range Arbalesters with infinite strength is insane, and they have the second best fighter in the game, but their version is spammable. I think Shank is the best fighter in the game. Gutlord is probably number 3, and the crossbow is number 2, but it's like you can spam that. You can't spam Shank or Gutlord. So yeah, they're They're pretty bad. They also have a very unfun reaction. Like their reaction was enough to get Huanchi thrown in Atlantic Ocean tier, and it's like not even the top two unfun things that Wildercore do. In fact, I would put them as being less fun than Soulblight Gravelords. A lot of people love their Order of Aesir. I don't find them very interesting, but is that a crime enough to put them in brackish? I don't think it is, because it's like just because I don't find them interesting, they don't do anything objectionable, right? So that seems fine. They are very shooty, which I don't think can get them into delicious, but other than that, I think they're perfectly reasonable. Man, Neve Black Talon, their shtick is they pinball Neve around the board with doubles, so she keeps getting bonus action after bonus action after bonus action, which is pretty cool. But I think it puts them kind of in this Gorger zone where, like, when they do their thing and it works, it's pretty unpleasant to be on the other side of. And when they don't do their thing and it doesn't work, you're in this awkward position of your opponent just can't do anything at all, and then you have to like console them. They're not as egregious about it as Gorgers though. So I think I'll put them in brackish. Pyrgeists. Pyrgeists want to be unpleasant. Like if their like tokens were actually good, they'd be super unpleasant to play against, but they're not. So if anything, I think they're in Clear Lake because it's just like they're so non-functional that they're just like a bunch of but it's the same thing where it's like you feel awkward and guilty for kicking their ass so bad. All right, Ruination Chamber, not quite in Dead Sea, but solidly Atlantic Ocean. That ability is very gotcha. You know, like people want to do cool stuff and then everyone hates counter spells. I don't hate counter spells, but most people don't like them, and that is the thing happening with with Ruination Chamber. They also have the classic Stormcast thing where just like some warbands can't hurt them, which, you know, is going to be unfun. So I think they're in Atlantic Ocean. Dark Oath, easily, deliciously filtered. Dark Oath are like the platonic ideal of Warcry design, I think. They have like a really interesting mechanic that also just isn't that good. Like it's not that it's not good, it's just like very fair. They have the Wilder Fiend, which is a really strong Titan, but it's not allyable. It has to be in Dark Oath. It's a troop. And then it doesn't scale with +1 attack. So it's like it's everything that a Titan should be, and that it doesn't really get a lot out of blessings. It isn't going to be allyable into a bunch of soup lists. They can do weird combos with it, like you can bring in the Skaven Master Molder and do cool stuff with it. You can do kind of cool stuff with the Dark Oath War Queen in there. They have this like way in which like they try to achieve missions with their heroes, and then you as the opponent have like really interesting counterplay that isn't like, you know, techie competitive counterplay. Like I really enjoy a lot of that stuff. Like I enjoy playing against Skaven because of some of the like interesting puzzle counterplay. But like Dark Oath is like, we are inviting you into this like narrative story based type of counterplay, which is like much more easy for all sorts of players to grasp as opposed to only super competitive players. And yet it's also competitively interesting too, because there's, you know, real meat and you know, like meat on the bone there, real crunch there. So I think Dark Oath are probably the most fun warband to play against. I think they're the best designed warband in the game, hands down. I think, I don't know if they're the most fun to play against. I think maybe some of these other ones might have them beat, but they're still pretty fun to play against. And the funny thing is I wouldn't call them necessarily the most fun to pilot either, because some of their hoops to jump through can be too hard to jump through. But like they're really fun to play against even if they're not number one, and they're fairly fun to pilot. maybe they'd be like the B tier of fun to pilot. And so, yeah, just incredible design on those. I am missing, looks like I didn't put Twist Weld or Terratic Cohort. Somehow I managed to get Pyrogeists in here, but I didn't manage to get the other ones in here. Listen, Twist Weld is, you know what? Let's pause the video and then we'll get those in there. All right, the final ones. Let's go. So, Riverblades can flood the board. They can get a ton of models on there. So I don't think they can be in Delicious filtered, but they're just not doing anything annoying. They can go really fast. So I could see them being annoying in a treasure mission. And they can put a lot of bodies out there. And your opponent is going to hate their life. Maybe they're in brackish. Twist Weld. I have played against Twist Weld in a casual setting. There is a little bit of like your opponent figures out that they're out of the game really early, but it's not the way that like some of the really low body count ones are. Twist Weld are awful to pilot, but I think they're pretty fun to play against. They're a lot of their abilities were kind of throttled down to be more fun to play against. Like the big damage boost they have is like really hard to use correctly, or like really hard to use well, because it's like built to not be that scary. Their burn spell is like built to not be that scary. So yeah, they're pretty fun to go against. All of their fighters do something, but they're also super easy to kill. So Twist Weld are fun, partly because they're bad and they do stuff, as opposed to like Corn Demons are bad, but they don't do stuff. And like, I don't know, maybe they're like Chaos Legionnaires, but I think they're just more interesting than Chaos Legionnaires. They have a big Chaos Legionnaire idea to them. I don't know. I think they are where they are. Terratic Cohort, I think, is brackish. I think they have a really cool shtick with the wild dice. Unfortunately, I think that the best way to play them is to be quote-unquote Terratic Cohort and just bring in a whole bunch of Soulblight Underworlds and use the Terratic Cohort ability to supercharge all of your Soulblight. And this is actually convincing me to put them into Atlantic Ocean, because really they're just bad Soulblight. You play Soulblight Gravelords, but then you have like 2 or 3 Terratic fighters in your warband, and you just build a ridiculous number of wild dice, and then you use it to fund the broken Soulblight abilities. And that's kind of all they do. They don't combo with themselves. Like the rate for burning wild dice to get your Terratic abilities online is just not as good as using those wild dice to do other stuff. Now, does that mean, am I punishing them because the competitive build is awful, but every other build is fine? Maybe they should be brackish the way like Fire Slayers. It's like the competitive build is awful, but it's really easy to build a fun Fire Slayers list. I think it's similarly easy to build a fun Terratic list. So I think they go in brackish. Just know that like the quote-unquote correct way to play Terratic Cohort is awful to play against. But, you know, that's fine. Here's the list. The top of the list almost looks like a competitive tier list. But I do think, you know, these bottom, these sort of quote-unquote fun factions are very reasonable. Now, I don't think that you should change what you play specifically because it might be unfun to play against. I certainly play a lot of KO because I think KO are so fun to play, and I think my build of KO is more brackish than Dead Sea, but there are some very awful ways you could play KO. So yeah, on whether you should like avoid warbands that are unfun to play against, like I just played with Sylvaneth, and I don't think it was that awful to play against, but it wasn't like, you know, beautiful joy time. The thing I think though with Warcry is that I'd rather play against an Atlantic Ocean team than not be playing Warcry, you know, be doing almost anything other than Warcry. These 5 though, no, I'd rather just skip the game. Well, Skaven, I actually like playing against, but the other four, I'd rather just skip the game. Those ones can go to hell. So, like anytime you're playing any of these ones in these top three tiers, I think you're giving a great game. It's just different shades here. So, hope you had fun with this. Hope you try out some of these guys in the delicious filtered tier, and when you do, I hope that all your rolls are crits. And if you play in the Dead Sea tier, I hope none of your rolls are crits.